Fear? It's a universal emotion that creeps into every corner of our lives, dictating our choices, chaining us to worry and robbing us of peace. But what if I told you that fear doesn't have to be the master of your mind? No, let's scratch that. Fear doesn't have to be anything but a gentle reminder that your time is of the essence. And for that to happen, for you to make fear benign, to reduce it to be a catalyst for your growth, you must overcome it. But can you? The Stoics believe you can. In fact, they do more than just believe that. They are the masters of the art of facing fear and the art of worrying less. They have practical techniques to combat and overcome fear, but they also believe that you need to be mindful of a lot of things before you can make good use of those techniques. After all, knowing what to practice is what kicks the practice properly into motion. This is why in this video, 5 ways to overcome your fears, we're diving deep into the teachings of the ancient Stoics to make you understand fear better, in all its forms, in all its crippling glory. You don't fight fear with worries, you fight it with virtue, clarity, and integrity. And because that is so, we'll start by tackling the fears that are the result of the impermanence of our bodies, before moving on to more personal, groundless fears and anxieties like the fear of loss and the fear of death, those looming shadows that keep us from truly living. Along the way, we'll uncover the subtle fears we inherit from others, fears imposed by gossip, jealousy, and society's whispers. We'll end it by exploring how Stoic practices can make you think clearly and keep calm, enabling you to see through your fears, worries, and anxieties. If you appreciate what we are doing here, do us a simple free favor by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And do watch the video till the end to get the mindfulness needed to accept what's keeping you from changing and what you must do to change. Now let's get into it. This is real talk for tough people, the Stoic way. Don't skip it, don't rush it. Hook those earphones up and let things go. Mind over body. Overcoming fear begins with a simple realization. You are not your body. When we allow the body to become our master, we tether ourselves to an anchor that pulls us into the depths of fear, anxiety, and insecurity. Think of it as being the captain of a ship who lets the vessel take command, drifting aimlessly in a sea of worry. In this state, every small wave, a cough, a blemish, a sign of aging, sparks a storm of fear that rocks your entire being. You're no longer the captain. You're a passenger, powerless and gripped by dread. Imagine living each day like this, with your mind confined to the narrow walls of physical fear, like a prisoner pacing within a tiny cell. What kind of life is that? One where your sense of freedom is eroded by the worry of what might happen next. If the ship of your body will sail smoothly or hit unseen rocks. The Stoic path teaches us that such worry is not just burdensome, it's preventable. It wants us to understand that while the body can experience pain or limitation, it is not the source of your peace or your identity. Let's take a step back and reframe how we see the body. The Stoics would remind us that the body is, indeed, a tool. Think of it like owning a car. You don't define yourself by the car you drive, nor do you let every dent or engine issue consume your mind. You care for it, you maintain it, but you don't obsess over it. Why then do we let our physical form hold such power over our mental state? The answer lies in misplaced focus. We've made the body a tyrant when it should only ever be a servant. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote extensively on the impermanence of the body, reminding us that while aging and physical decline are natural, they do not diminish our worth. He exemplified this in his meditations, where he often meditated on memento mori, a reminder of the inevitability of death. But instead of letting this fact fuel fear, The Stoics used it to inspire a focus on what truly matters, living well and living wisely. This is where the power of Stoicism shines, teaching us to shift our attention from the external to the internal, from the fragile body to the resilient mind. Think about it. If you live each day fearing sickness, aging, or judgment, are you truly living? Or are you just surviving, caught in a loop of dread that robs you of joy? The body will age, health will fluctuate, and pain will sometimes knock at the door. But when we align ourselves with Stoic wisdom, we learn that these are not reasons to panic, but opportunities to practice self-restraint and inner resilience. When we choose to focus on what we can control, we regain power. We see that while we cannot always prevent pain, illness, or the effects of time, we can control how we respond. We can practice letting go of the fear that shackles us and instead cultivate a growth mindset that values strength of character over strength of muscle, wisdom over physical perfection. Consider how liberating this shift in mindset can be. When the body becomes merely a vessel, a means to navigate the world, and not the entirety of who you are, you stop caring so deeply about its imperfections. You stop letting every creak and groan of your physical form dictate your peace. You learn to live, not just cautiously, but fully, unbound by paranoia. Overcoming fear is not about denying that we have bodies or that they can suffer. It's about recognizing that we are more than just bodies. Our true selves are the drivers, capable of steering through life's challenges with a steady hand. When you guard your mind and prioritize self-awareness, you cultivate inner strength that outlasts any physical setback. So take care of your body, feed it, exercise it, rest it. But remember, you are not your body. You are the thinker, the creator, the learner within. Why worry about what isn't real? Overcoming groundless fears is one of the most profound challenges we face, and yet it is also one of the most rewarding. Fear, by its nature, feeds on uncertainty and thrives in the fertile grounds of our imagination. We are often haunted not by what is, but by what might be. The Stoics remind us that our suffering is often magnified by this habit of anticipating worst-case scenarios, where our minds spin out stories far more terrifying than reality itself. The irony and tragedy of this is that many of these imagined threats never materialize. We suffer more in our own thoughts than we ever do in actual life. Consider how often your peace has been shattered by a thought, a whisper of a potential problem, a suspicion of failure, or a hint of conflict. These are not crises, but mere shadows, flickers of danger that we amplify until they block out the light of the present moment. The Stoic path teaches us that to give in to these groundless fears is to chain ourselves to misery that hasn't even arrived. We suffer not because of events themselves, but because of our judgments about them. This is the essence of Stoic wisdom, to separate what is from what we imagine it to be. Picture this: you're in a room, safe and sound, yet a harmless mouse scurries by. The mind, left unchecked, reacts as if a lion has appeared. Your heart races, your breath quickens, and fear courses through you. Yet the reality is far less menacing than your reaction would suggest. This disproportionate response, this transformation of a mouse into a lion, illustrates how we exaggerate potential dangers in our minds. We see shadows and flinch as if they were real monsters. Epictetus offers us a shift in perspective here. Our fears are often more dangerous than the objects of our fear. Why do we let this happen? Our minds are wired to respond to threats as if they are immediate and certain. This served a purpose in our ancient past, when survival depended on reacting swiftly to dangers in the wild. But in modern life, this primal reaction becomes maladaptive. The anxieties we face today are often not life-threatening. They're fears of embarrassment, rejection, or failure, none of which justify the level of fear they inspire. The Stoics teach us to bring our fears into check, to look at them with the calm eye of reason and see them for what they are, often baseless, sometimes exaggerated, and always within our power to reduce. What if, instead of allowing our minds to run wild with worry, we paused and examined our fears? Take a moment to pause and reflect on how many of these fears have actually come to pass. How many sleepless nights were wasted worrying over things that never happened? The Stoic truth is that most of our fears exist only in our minds. By practicing cognitive reframing, we can shift our focus away from exaggerated dangers and toward rational, measured responses. This doesn't mean dismissing every fear as silly. It means assessing whether it's grounded in reality. The Stoic practice of prudence involves challenging our fearful thoughts and asking, is this truly worth my peace? If the answer is no, then we are better served by letting it go. It is not about recklessness. It's about discerning what deserves our attention and energy. And for those fears that seem too entrenched to be reasoned away, the Stoics offer a perspective that's equally valuable. Counter them with hope. Hope, while not as concrete as reason, can act as a balancing force. It reminds us that the future is full of possibilities, not just the ones we fear, but also those we dream of. More on how to strike a balance between fear and hope in the last chapter, where we discuss how to think clearly. To combat these fears, we must remember that they are often just stories we tell ourselves. A neutral glance becomes a judgment. A missed message becomes rejection. A challenge becomes a threat of failure. We create negative emotions by letting our imagination spiral out of control. Stay mindful of these distortions and practice seeing things as they are, not as your fear paints them to be. When real dangers do come, and they will, face them as the Stoics suggest, with courage and clarity. We'll dive deep into how to muster that courage and cultivate clarity too in the last chapter of the video. So stick around, you don't want to miss that. This is how you cultivate resilience. The next time your mind starts weaving tales of impending doom, ask yourself, is this fear serving me, or am I serving it? Remind yourself that while the things you fear may never happen, the time you waste fearing them is very real. To let go of these groundless fears is to reclaim your present and live with a sense of calm, balance, and true freedom. So guard your mind, keep it clear and strong, so that when life's real challenges arise, you can face them without the added weight of unnecessary worry. And if hope alone isn't enough, return to reason, to the Stoic approach that teaches us to value peace over panic. In doing so, you'll discover that overcoming groundless fears isn't just possible, it's transformative. Social anxiety. When we talk about overcoming fears that might come about because of others, we're diving into one of the most profound challenges of social existence. Humans are by nature social creatures, deeply influenced by the opinions, reactions, and emotions of those around them. The fear that arises from these social interactions, jealousy, hatred, and scorn, can gnaw at our peace and disrupt our confidence if we let it. But Stoic wisdom provides us with tools to navigate these treacherous waters and emerge resilient. First, consider where these emotions come from. Jealousy often arises when someone measures their own worth against what you possess, be it wealth, status, or even simple contentment. They see in you what they believe is missing in themselves, and that absence turns into resentment. Hatred, similarly, can be born from perceived slights or threats. It can emerge when someone feels overshadowed by your success or intimidated by your presence, even if that threat is only in their imagination. Scorn follows a different path, appearing when someone, in their insecurity, feels the need to diminish you, to boost themselves. It's a facade of superiority that masks an underlying sense of inadequacy. These emotions are dangerous, not just because they can drive others to act against you, but because they can seep into your own mind. Constantly worrying about others' motives or judgments can become an exhausting cycle. You might find yourself questioning your every move, tailoring your actions to avoid becoming a target of these toxic feelings. This vigilance saps your energy and clouds your mind, leaving you anxious, defensive, and unable to focus on what truly matters. So, how do we free ourselves from the fear of others' reactions? The Stoics offer a perspective that's simple yet profound. Live in accordance with your values, not others' perceptions. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that others' opinions were external and beyond his control. What he could control were his responses, how he chose to live, speak, and act. Stoic teachings advise us to find the middle path. This doesn't mean living a life of mediocrity, but rather striking a balance that avoids extremes. If you live ostentatiously, flaunting your success and inviting attention, jealousy is sure to follow. If you shrink too far into the background, others may dismiss or overlook you, which can lead to being undervalued or ignored. The key is to live authentically, to neither hide who you are nor exaggerate your presence. Think of it like walking a tightrope, with envy and hostility on one side and invisibility on the other. The wise individual walks this rope with calm and poise. They let their achievements speak for themselves, avoiding the need for applause or external validation. They practice self-restraint in their words and actions, ensuring they are constructive rather than confrontational. They understand that true confidence is quiet and steady. It doesn't need to be broadcast. In practical terms, overcoming this fear means being mindful of your interactions. Are your words chosen to foster understanding, or are they sharp with pride or defensiveness? Are you contributing to conversations with the intention to build others up, or subtly one-upping them to feed your ego? The Stoic path emphasizes contribution over competition and understanding over victory. There's power in this kind of restraint, in not letting the potential for others' jealousy or criticism dictate your actions. It's a form of cognitive reframing, viewing the opinions and emotions of others as outside your circle of control. Epictetus emphasized that our true freedom lies in our ability to control our responses. If someone harbors envy or resentment toward you, recognize that this is a reflection of their struggles, not yours. This is not to say that you should become indifferent to others' feelings. Feel empathy for those caught in their own fears and insecurities, but don't let it alter the course of your life. Maintain a kind, respectful demeanor, but don't compromise your values or your peace to appease the moods of others. This balance allows you to move through life with inner resilience, maintaining your course without fear of social backlash. Ultimately, to overcome the fears that come from others means to trust in your own path. Live in such a way that your integrity speaks for itself without needing to shout. Let your work and character make their quiet, confident statement. When you align with Stoic principles, you discover that while others may judge, envy, or criticize, their emotions are their burden, not yours. You walk your path, not seeking to dominate others or fearing their judgment, but with the calm assurance that you are enough as you are. This is how you reclaim your life from the shadows of social fear. Stoic advice for hard days. Overcoming the fear of loss requires a deep, unwavering acceptance of one fundamental truth: impermanence. In life, nothing remains untouched by the passage of time or the capricious hands of fortune. To live fully, we must confront the harsh reality that everything we hold dear is transient. This isn't a notion meant to sow despair, but to bring clarity and strength. The Stoics recognize that loss is not a mere possibility, it is an inevitability. To fear it is to invite perpetual anxiety. To understand and accept it is to find freedom. Seneca eloquently observed that fortune is capricious and powerful, capable of upending even the most seemingly secure achievements. We may build our lives, careers, and relationships with painstaking effort, investing time, love, and hope, only to see them collapse in a moment. It's tempting to think that because we have worked hard or achieved stability, we are immune to life's sudden reversals. But the truth is, the brighter something shines, the more fiercely it may attract the attention of fate. Triumphs, accomplishments, and even relationships are not immune to fortune's reach. Take, for example, the story of a powerful empire. Decades, sometimes centuries, are spent building its grandeur brick by brick, with each ruler adding their legacy to its towering presence. Yet all it takes is one moment, a betrayal, an unforeseen invasion, a natural disaster, for that empire to fall to ruin. Imagine this metaphor applied to the smaller empires we each create. A thriving business shattered by an economic downturn, a lifelong friendship dissolved by a single misunderstanding, or a cherished home destroyed by fire or flood. The Stoic wisdom here is not in fearing these losses, but in expecting and accepting them as part of life's cycle. When we brace ourselves with the understanding that loss is as natural as gain, we begin to strip away the fear that so often dictates our actions. Marcus Aurelius, in Meditations, taught that we should expect the unexpected, preparing our minds not only for what is probable, but also for what is possible. To do otherwise is to live in a fragile bubble of comfort, which will inevitably burst when fortune's unpredictable hand strikes. And strike it will, sometimes subtly, sometimes with the force of a tempest. The reality is that fortune does not have a singular method of attack. It can be subtle, like a slowly shifting tide, or abrupt, like a bolt of lightning. Sometimes it even uses our own actions against us, turning what once protected us into instruments of downfall. Consider how alliances that once provided safety can become sources of betrayal, or how financial security can breed complacency that leads to ruin. Even a peaceful, prosperous era can suddenly transform into conflict or chaos, showing us that no state of life is permanently safe. The lesson here is not to live in constant dread of disaster, but to cultivate a mindset prepared for anything. If you accept that even the most cherished things can be taken away, you remove their power to cripple you. You begin to see life through a lens of resilience. This isn't pessimism, it's a recognition that allows for peace amid the uncertainty. Memento mori, the practice of remembering our mortality, isn't just about death, but also about the loss of all things dear to us. When we remind ourselves that nothing lasts forever, we appreciate life more deeply and live without the suffocating grip of fear. Imagine the constant vigilance that accompanies fearing loss, always looking over your shoulder, worrying that today might be the day it all unravels. This is not living, it's surviving, and barely at that. Stoic teachings suggest a more empowering approach, to embrace life's impermanence so fully that we are not shaken when the inevitable happens. Accept that the structures we build, be they personal, professional, or social, are all destined to fall one day, be it through the passage of time, a sudden storm, or the quiet erosion of neglect. When you internalize this Stoic truth, you not only overcome the fear of loss, but also change your relationship with what you hold dear. You learn to cherish people and things without clinging to them, enjoying them fully without letting their potential departure cast a shadow over your happiness. This is what it means to be prepared in advance, to build mental fortitude, not just for typical hardships, but for the most catastrophic potentialities life can present. Think of the grandest monuments of human achievement, those once deemed eternal symbols of power and ingenuity. History shows that none of them were immune to ruin. Great cities, empires, and civilizations have been swept away by time, leaving behind echoes of their former glory. Yet, this fate is not tragic when viewed through the eyes of Stoic philosophy. It is simply the way of the world, the natural order that everything born, made, or conceived must eventually fall. To overcome the fear of loss is to accept that while destruction is swift and merciless, your peace of mind doesn't have to be. By practicing this acceptance, you free yourself from the chains of worry. When life's storms inevitably come, you will be ready, not because you can control them, but because you have trained yourself to remain calm in their presence. This is the heart of Stoicism, knowing that while we cannot prevent loss, we can decide not to be paralyzed by it. We can choose to live with resilience, facing whatever comes with the untroubled confidence that we will endure. Remember, you will die. Overcoming the fear of death is perhaps the most profound challenge that any person can undertake. It is deeply ingrained in the human psyche, magnified by centuries of stories, myths, and societal conditioning. We grow up absorbing fearful whispers about death, whether through cautionary tales, religious teachings, or the tragic endings we witness. These collective fears seep into us until death itself becomes a shadow, an unspoken terror. But Stoic philosophy invites us to challenge this conditioning and look death squarely in the eye, not as an enemy, but as an inevitable aspect of existence. Let's start by considering why we fear death so deeply. The Stoics offer a perspective that points to society's role in this fear. Just as we might fear the opinions of others without reason, we come to fear death not because we've experienced it ourselves, but because we have been told to. The dread of death is built upon stories, assumptions, and dramatic portrayals that depict it as the ultimate loss or punishment. But, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, what is death if not a natural process? He saw it as an event no different from birth, sleep, or growth, an integral part of life's cycle that deserves neither praise nor dread. Think about the irrationality of letting idle talk control how we feel. Would you let gossip taint your perception of yourself? Would you let rumors dictate your value? The answer for anyone seeking truth and resilience is no. In the same way, why should death, steeped in the same kind of uninformed chatter and societal myths, have power over our peace of mind? Death, like gossip, has no real substance until we give it one. To see death rationally, Stoic teachings advise stripping away the layers of fear imposed by others. Ask yourself, what do we really know about death? We have no first-hand account from those who have experienced it, no objective reason to fear it other than its unknown nature. This fear of the unknown, when unexamined, becomes a prison for the mind. It leads us to live anxiously, fearing the inevitable, instead of embracing life's finite moments. There is a deeper understanding we gain when we recognize that death is not a punishment, but a release. Seneca spoke of death as a return to the natural order, a peaceful escape from life's struggles. Imagine a person living with unbearable pain, facing relentless trials, with no relief in sight. For them, death is not the thief of life, but the gentle liberator that sets them free from suffering. When viewed this way, the fear of death begins to lose its edge, revealing that it can be a friend to those who have known only hardship. Moreover, when we practice self-reflection, we realize that accepting death means embracing freedom. Once you no longer fear the ultimate unknown, other fears seem to shrink in significance. If death itself holds no terror, then what power do other worries hold? The fear of embarrassment, failure, or loss pales when compared to the fear of death, and when that greatest fear is mastered, we truly become unshakable. Epictetus reminded us that death is simply an event, part of the universal order that we cannot control. This is where the dichotomy of control comes into play. We cannot change the fact that we will one day die, but we can change how we perceive and approach it. By focusing on what we can control, our thoughts, attitudes, and responses, we transform our relationship with death. It becomes not a looming specter, but an accepted part of life. Consider this. Would you live your life differently if you stopped fearing death? The answer is often yes. Without the weight of this fear, life's challenges become less daunting, choices become clearer, and moments become richer. This is the power of accepting death. It liberates you from the chains of constant worry and opens up a path to live more fully and authentically. The Stoic path is not about denying death, but about accepting it so deeply that it no longer interferes with your peace. Imagine the serenity of living without fear of the inevitable. In doing so, you walk through life with a sense of calm, clarity, and purpose. You see life for what it truly is, a series of moments, each precious precisely because it is fleeting. You begin to cherish your experiences, relationships, and even struggles, knowing that they are part of a limited, beautiful journey. Death ceases to be an enemy and becomes a silent companion, reminding you that time is your most valuable asset. Finally, when you embrace philosophy and cultivate this mindset, you find that you have mastered yourself. You stop letting fear dictate your choices, and you start to live boldly, guided not by the avoidance of death, but by the pursuit of a meaningful life. Marcus Aurelius, the man who solved the universe, exemplified this idea by reminding us that we should not fear our end, but should instead prepare for it as the culmination of a well-lived life. In this acceptance, we find liberation. We focus on what we can control, live in accordance with nature, and greet the end, not with trembling, but with understanding. When you reach this state, you understand why facing death is the key to success. And when you do that, you truly become unshakable, not because you deny death's reality, but because you have stripped it of its power to terrify you. Accept death, and you will accept your own freedom. Think clearly. We must carefully balance our hopes and fears, weighing them with the same consideration we would give to any important decision. When faced with uncertainty, why not choose to believe in the outcome we desire? If fear starts to dominate our thoughts, tipping the scales toward anxiety, we should consciously lean in the opposite direction. It's crucial to stop tormenting ourselves with endless worry, especially when there's no clear evidence that trouble is on the horizon. The truth is, most people allow themselves to become agitated and distressed, even when nothing is actually wrong. We often get swept up in a current of fear without pausing to consider whether it's justified or not. Once fear begins to take hold, we rarely stop to question it. We don't challenge the stories we hear or the fears they generate. Instead, we let ourselves be carried away by every new worry, as if uncertainty itself were a guarantee of disaster. We panic over possibilities, treat them as certainties, and allow the smallest doubts to grow into overwhelming fears. This kind of behavior is all too common, and it's a path our human nature often leads us down. We're wired to be cautious, to see danger in the unknown, but that doesn't mean we should let these instincts run unchecked. Because this tendency is so deeply ingrained, it's all the more important that we make a conscious effort to cultivate and strengthen the good qualities within us. We should build up our courage, our resilience, and our capacity for hope. These are the tools that can help us resist the pull of fear and stay grounded, even when faced with uncertainty. Instead of giving in to panic, we should remind ourselves that not every fear is rational or justified. We must practice the discipline of stopping ourselves when we begin to be swept away by fear, and of questioning whether the source of our anxiety is truly worth our distress. Imagine someone else saying, "Perhaps the worst will not happen." This is a comforting thought, and one that can help calm our fears. But we can take it a step further. Even if the worst does happen, what then? We must be ready to meet it head-on with the attitude of a fighter stepping into the ring. Let us see who wins, we should say, embracing the challenge rather than shrinking from it. Perhaps the outcome we fear will turn out to be in our best interest after all. It may bring about a new opportunity, a chance to grow, or a way to demonstrate our strength and character. Take the example of Socrates, who faced death with dignity when he drank the hemlock. His death, far from being a tragedy, became a defining moment of his life, a final act of courage that has inspired countless others through the ages. Or consider Cato, who chose to end his life with a sword rather than live under tyranny. By doing so, he preserved his integrity and became a symbol of resistance against oppression. Had someone taken that sword from him, they would have deprived him of his greatest moment of glory. These examples show that even the worst outcomes can carry a kind of nobility, a chance for us to stand firm in our principles and show the world what we are truly made of. So instead of letting fear rule us, we should ask ourselves, what if this trial is the very thing that will bring out the best in me? By reframing our fears in this way, we transform them from sources of anxiety into opportunities for growth and honor. But that's not all. There's another benefit of this mindset: time, precious time. By not allowing ourselves to be consumed by fear or anxiety over what might happen, we buy ourselves the time to live fully in the present. This time is invaluable, for within it lies the potential for countless events and circumstances to unfold that could delay, diminish, or even eliminate the trials we fear. Life has a way of throwing unexpected turns in our path, and sometimes those turns work in our favor. A fire might force us to flee, but that very act of fleeing could lead us to safety. In moments of catastrophe, we might find an unexpected escape or a stroke of luck that softens the blow. Consider this. Even in situations where it seems that fate has cornered us, there is still a chance for reprieve. A sword may be poised at our throat, but that doesn't mean it will necessarily strike. History is full of stories where the condemned have been spared at the last moment, where executioners have been stayed, and where those who seemed doomed to suffer have found unexpected deliverance. Bad fortune is capricious. It doesn't always follow through as we might expect. It can change its course, shift its focus, or even pass us by entirely. In the face of uncertainty, then, why should we allow ourselves to suffer in advance? Why should we let the mere possibility of hardship rob us of the peace and joy we could be experiencing right now? The future is unwritten, and while it holds the potential for pain, it equally holds the potential for joy, for success, for happiness. By looking forward to better things, we cultivate a sense of hope and resilience that can carry us through even the darkest of times. Moreover, there is a pragmatic wisdom in not rushing to meet our suffering before it arrives. By conserving our emotional energy and not allowing ourselves to be prematurely burdened by fear, we keep ourselves mentally and emotionally prepared to deal with challenges as they arise. We give ourselves the space to adapt, to respond flexibly to whatever life throws our way, rather than being worn down by the weight of anticipated suffering. In essence, this approach is about striking a balance between realism and optimism. We acknowledge that troubles may come, but we do not let the fear of them dominate our thoughts. Instead, we keep our eyes open for the good that could just as easily come our way. We prepare for the worst, but we hope for the best. And in doing so, we ensure that we live fully in the present, making the most of our time and our lives, no matter what the future may hold. So rather than running out to meet suffering head-on, let's cultivate patience, hope, and a readiness to embrace whatever positive developments may arise. By doing this, we not only safeguard our present well-being, but also strengthen our ability to face whatever may come with greater resilience and grace. In the meantime, as we wait for life to unfold, let us look forward to better things, because just as misfortune is uncertain, so too is the potential for happiness and success. Our most pervasive fears, poverty, sickness, and the violence of others are all intimately linked to our attachment to the body. The decline of the body is a stark reminder that our time is finite, and with it, the life we know and cherish. And looming over all of this is the ultimate fear, death. These fears are powerful, but they are often amplified by our minds. Our imagination can be our worst enemy. Whether it is the fear of sickness or poverty or of powerful individuals or groups, we envision the worst-case scenarios, blowing them out of proportion until they overshadow everything else. Some of these threats loom large because they are visible, loud, and often dramatic, while others do not announce themselves with much fanfare. They creep up on us, frequently unnoticed until they are already at our doorstep. Yet, despite their subtlety, they are no less dangerous. In fact, our imagination can be our worst enemy, not only because it can amplify these pervasive fears, but because it can assist and amplify the less existential but still insidious fears of social interaction, satisfaction, and isolation. Ultimately, whatever the type, there is nothing so certain among the objects of our fear that it outweighs the uncertainty of life itself. The dangers we dread often fade into nothing, and the hopes we cherish can just as easily lead to disappointment. And so, Stoic wisdom calls us to strengthen our minds, to reclaim our peace from the clutches of unnecessary fear. It asks us to keep our imaginations in check by focusing on the present reality rather than the possible future. It asks us to balance our fears with hope by recognizing their transitory nature. By encouraging the practice of reflection, it helps us cultivate the mindfulness we need to show not reckless bravery, but wise caution in response to these fears. With this mindfulness, we avoid situations that could provoke powerful enemies who might eventually come for our heads or expose us to unnecessary and often secretive dangers of the body that ultimately rot us from within. Most importantly, we avoid becoming that enemy ourselves. Discretion is often the better part of valor. Sometimes the best way to emerge victorious is not by fighting every battle, but by sidestepping those that don't need to be fought at all. This isn't cowardice, it's prudence, and life, must we forget, is too short to be spent suffering over what might never happen. Will the brave man expose himself to dangers? Not at all. He will not fear them, but he will avoid them. Caution suits him, not fear. If you like what we do, feel free to do more by liking and sharing the video, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, to the community. How, you ask? By hitting that like button as a symbol of your commitment to change, by subscribing to join a community where wisdom isn't just shared but lived to help us create powerful stuff. And don't forget to hit the notification bell, the gentle chime of a Stoic philosopher, reminding you to return to this space of learning and growth. Each like, each subscription, each notification is a step towards a collective awakening. And if you feel that stirring in your heart a resonance with the words of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, or Epictetus, share this video. That will help us immensely in continuing to create unique and powerful stuff for the community. Everything changes when you truly hear what Stoicism has been telling us all along. Everything gets better. Your self-discipline, your self-control, your temperance, your cultivation of inner peace and resilience, your self-awareness, your equanimity. You practice forgiveness more often. You stop caring what others think. You start to live with a sense of calm, clarity, and purpose. Even the practice of Stoic principles of the dichotomy of control, negative visualization, memento mori, amor fati, and the view from above gets easier and, more importantly, effective.